been there. First time about 4 years ago.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. I'd like to say Happy New Year to everyone. Hope you had a safe, fantastic Christmas with friends and family. Madam Clerk, at this time, we'll do roll call. We have Commissioner Smith, Burns, Britton, and Carswell all in attendance, along with our interim county manager. Stand up to see him. He's hiding over there. Our county attorney and our county finance officer as well, Madam Clerk. I would remind everyone to please silence their mobile devices and all speakers to activate the microphone at the lectern before speaking for recording purposes for YouTube. And so also so you can be heard for those in the audience as well. At this time, folks, our first item of business is approval of the agenda. Gentlemen, you've had the agenda submitted to you previously. Are there any additions or deletions? And if not, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. All those in favor signify with an uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk. This moves us to presentations. Kay will sit in for Caitlin. This is a placeholder for Pet of the Month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to recognize a dog and cat in need of its forever home at the regular meeting, and I'm filling in for Caitlin.
So, Madam Clerk, I assume we'll get an update on how successful some of the events were at the regular meeting.
I'm sure she'd be delighted to share that.
Okay. Gentlemen, questions, comments? If not, thank you. At this time, we'll move on to presentation number 2, Health Department presentation of 2022 to Community Health Assessment presented by Che Moore, our Health Education Supervisor. How are you today?
Doing well. I hope you all are.
I'm sorry. Okay, got it for you.
Thank you. So, good afternoon. My name is Che Moore, and I'm the Public Health Education Supervisor at the Burke County Health Department. I'm here to present the 2022 Community Health Assessment, which you may also hear me refer to as the CHA, just as an abbreviation. Just to kind of give some background to the Community Health Assessment. The purpose is to give insight to community members and shareholders on the current health status of the community. So this process began back in September of 2021, which myself and then a group called the Burke Wellness Initiative, along with some other community members, came together to revise the survey that was given in 2019 during that CHA. And so we had noticed in previous years that we had a low response rate on the Community Health Assessment Survey. And so that was kind of our first line of business, is to kind of review that survey and to weed out any questions that didn't need to be there, add in what needed, just to hopefully get a better response rate. So the community health assessment is structured around gathering primary data, which is part of the survey that I mentioned, but then also conducting focus groups. So going back to the survey, once it was revised, it was released out to the community to partake in starting in January of 2022. And we had 2,149 respondents that came in from that survey, which was double the return of the 2019 assessment. So the survey was offered in both English and Spanish, and it was made accessible through a QR code, clicking of a link, a hyperlink, also through paper copies as well. The focus groups, as I mentioned, were also part of that primary data collection. We planned for 9 specific focus groups to kind of diversify the groups, but to also hear feedback from at least all representatives of the Burke County community. 7 of those 9 groups met the criteria for a focus group. And so with that being said, that resulted in 46 participants in our focus groups. And so one of the unique things that we saw during this process, we were in the midst of a pandemic. And so that was like the first of its kind that this assessment was being conducted during something of that nature. And so just hearing firsthand the feedback from the community members, whether it was the discrimination they felt while the pandemic was going on, whether it was the mental health issues that they experienced personally, either from being furloughed or laid off in jobs, their children, being kept at home, social distancing, all of that. So a lot of mental health struggles were occurring in both adults and children. We saw an uprise in substance use disorder during that time also. So those are just really kind of key highlights that we found during that time, just hearing firsthand from community members. And so we took that primary data after we collected the surveys and the focus group responses, and we compared it to the secondary data that was specific to Burt. And all of that's listed in the report that you all have. But just kind of comparing the findings from that primary data to the secondary findings, and kind of paying close attention to areas that Burke was rising in, and then also how that played in part with the responses from the survey and the focus groups. So the key findings that we found were mental health, obesity with risk factors, substance use disorder, lack of affordable housing, health literacy or cultural competence, and transportation being one of the biggest issues that people had mentioned. And so the group, Burke Wellness Group, with some other community members, took part in a voting process back in July of 22, and at that time, we were voting on the 3 priority areas that we were going to focus on for the next 3 years. And so once the voting was concluded, mental health was the first on the list. Substance use disorder came in at a second, and then obesity with risk factors. 2 interesting things that were found with that was mental health we've seen that in one of the priority areas back in 2016. And then substance use disorder has been on the list for the last 7 years. So it's been a continuous issue that community members have made aware that it's something of importance, that something needs to be done about, as well as shareholders that are in the community working. So the next steps that we go from here are the development of a community health improvement plan. So that's just kind of putting the community health assessment into action. So myself and the Burke Wellness Initiative will work on that this month. We're starting this month. So the official plan isn't due until later in the year, but just kind of, looking at what programs are currently existent in the community that focus around mental health, substance use disorder, obesity, what can be enhanced, what new programs can be developed, and then also kind of asking the question of why is this happening before we can answer the question of how we're going to create a solution. So, paying attention to the trends that we're seeing, especially just over the last 5 or so years of where we're at, and then, you can kind of pay attention with the trends and seeing where, what's the story telling us. So what particular event occurred in this year for mental health to skyrocket? And in this case, it's going to be COVID. It's going to be a big partaker in that. But just paying attention to those trends while we're trying to create solutions is the way that we're kind of going to navigate with that. Let's see. Sorry, I have lots of papers up here. Okay. So just kind of giving some brief highlights on what I felt was important to share with you all of specific stats that are pertinent to Burke County. The percent of those that are living in Burke County under the 200% of the federal poverty level remains on average around 42%. So that is almost half of our population. The highest percentage of those that are living in poverty in Burke County are children that are at least aged 5. So approximately 64% of Hispanics who live in Burke County have an income that's below 200% of the federal poverty level. And then in 2019, 13.7% of Burke County experienced severe housing problems. And then severe housing problems are classified as anything that's overcrowding, so multiple people living within a single-family home. Monthly housing costs that are 30 to 50% of your monthly income, lack of adequate kitchen or plumbing facilities. So it was also evident that the pandemic played a huge role on school-aged children physically, socially, and mentally. We learned during that time that things like internet access is no longer a thing of luxury. It's a necessity item that Americans have to have on a daily basis. And so it was around 35% of Burke County families didn't have access to internet during that time. So food insecurity was also an issue that was seen during the pandemic with school-aged children. And people who took the survey, as I had mentioned, admitted that their child struggled with mental health or depression during the pandemic. Cancer is currently the leading cause of death in Burke County, which could potentially be indirectly tied back to our increase in obesity rates. Approximately 23% of adults in Burke County smoke, which is higher than the state's percentage. Burke County is considered an aging community, and over the next 20 years, the percentage of adults 65 and older, it's looking to increase by 18%. STDs are also increasing in our county, such as chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and hep C. They've either increased or they've stayed steady over the last 7 years. And then some good news, some teen pregnancy rates have gradually declined within the county. So just once we developed the CHIP plan and trying to create strategies around those 3 specific priority areas, just taking into consideration that cultural competency is something that's going to have to be looked at when looking at mental health, just kind of addressing, that different cultures view mental health differently. Just for a brief example, on one of the focus groups that we did, we had a Hmong group, and one of the participants had expressed that, in their culture, mental health is something that's not talked about. It's very taboo to discuss. And so it's, you have people that are wanting to seek out help, but it's like, how do they go about doing so? So trying to take that in consideration when creating a solution to that. Same thing with substance use disorder. It's something that they know that it goes on like within their culture, but that it's something that like you don't talk about. So just taking cultural competency into consideration. Also looking at how the linkages can connect between the 3. So substance use disorder and mental health tend to go hand in hand in a lot of situations. And so when we create solutions for one, thinking about how that's going to play in with the other, for example. So at this time, I'm going to open the floor to any questions that you all may have.
Jay, great presentation. Thank you so much. That's a lot of information,
Yeah.
a lot of great information in there. So we appreciate all the hard work you've done on this. Gentlemen, questions, comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
A couple questions, maybe. I did my homework like I learned at County Commissioner School, and as I'm going through the health assessment, if I direct your attention to page 45 under the internal equity team, I see words on there. Well, equity is one of them: cultural bias, health equity, cultural competency in healthcare, how to achieve our desired equity impact. And just coming from an old conservative that knows a little bit about the Constitution and used to teach Western civilization, that sounds a whole lot like critical race theory and social justice, which are 2 tenets of communism and Marxism. And I noticed that we hired a group from Charlotte, Work for Change, W4C. I went to their website when these words sounded the alarm to me, and they come right out and tell you that our approach is embedded in social justice, equity, and humanism. Humanism, if you've ever studied that, is a belief that God has no place in society, that man can solve all his problems by himself, and things like that. That concerns me a little bit. My question is, how did we get the Work for Change group? Who invited them up here, and was there any oversight over what they stood for and teaching critical race theory and things of that nature?
So, just kind of give a brief background. So we accepted a grant from the CDC that was given through NCDHHS
Yes.
last fall. And so one of the requirements for that grant was that our staff was to receive some internal equity training. And so we kind of got the leeway to find who we wanted to provide that training. And so our main goal for that training, though, was that it wasn't going to be a 1-hour session that they were going to be in and out, but that it was something that they were going to come in and like work with our staff individually or within smaller groups, and that it would detail towards that specific department of the health department. So they broke us out into clinical group, admin group, environmental health, because we all interact with the public differently. So they tailored a lesson plan that was specific for that particular group. And so while equity was the background of like why we had the training, because that was the requirements of the grant, but we also want to create an environment at the health department that if anyone, no matter where they go within the county, if they are mistreated for whatever reason, that they come to us and that they receive the best care as possible. That's really like the bottom line of like what we're trying to get at. So just equity in how we interact with each other as staff members, but then also equity in how we interact with the public was our main goal behind that.
Did the health department show any inclination of not treating every customer the same before we had this group come in here? Or I guess the point I'm trying to make is, was that included in the grant, the cost for paying that? Did we have to pay extra to have that crowd come up here? And would it be possible for me or anyone else that would like to have an outline of the block of instruction for each of the 6 periods of instruction? Could I get an outline of that?
Sure. That's not an issue.
Danny, do you have anything to add? I saw you.
Commissioner, I don't know where you saw those things in there, but critical race theory, those things weren't in that at all. So we look at different populations that are in this community, and a lot of times we are the place that takes care of them. And we have to understand whether it's the Guatemalans that have come here or senior citizens, we look at population health and those things. If you have questions in the future, you can always give me a call.
That's what this meeting here is for, sir. That's why I brought the questions here. I think the public needs to know that we've got words like that embedded into our community health assessment, and whether we like it or not, that's how Marxism and globalism and all that
Commissioner,
stuff
I can
is.
assure you there is no Marxism or communism in there.
Well, those
That-
words are endemic to those beliefs and philosophies.
Anything else? Gentlemen, other questions, comments? There being none, Jake, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. That'll move us to item number 4, scheduled public hearings. We'll get our interim county manager, Alan Glines, to present community development zoning map amendment ZMA 2022-05. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Mulvey, Vice Chair Britton, members of the board. We have a request from Steve and Jamie Gassner to rezone their parcels of land, which total about 32 acres, rezoning about 20 acres of that from residential 2 to general business district. The properties, if I can get this to work properly, I'm sorry. There's a large tract there, I'm going to point that out to you. Here, and that's zoned, as you can see, to R2, and they want to zone it to general business to match what's next door. And what is next door is the Moose Lodge on Moose Lodge Road, And they have a very large a campground there, RV park. And these folks are wanting to zone about that much of that tract, about 20 acres, to a general business. They would leave the rest of it in the R2 format to provide a natural buffer from the other residential areas around there. And their hopes are to develop their own campground that would sort of work with and be associated with the Moose Lodge. So the staff reviewed this, the planning board reviewed it. The planning board reviewed it and recommended 4-0 to support the request for you all. And then staff, as we noted, some of the conditions or issues with this, we appreciate the large buffer for the residential subdivisions that surround it. The site is sort of set in the back and unique. I'm going to keep going here with these images. This is the kind of Moose Lodge property, and they're going to be right about here with their rezoning area, leaving a 12-acre buffer. And finally, let's see, next slide, that's the two pieces, to the south and west would be those tracts. And this would be their buffer. And then this is the Moose Lodge property. So even though we're going to a general business category by request, it's so far off the road, there's not really going to be any other commercial uses that are going to be real viable there, except for something very specific that needs that kind of a remote kind of location surrounded by woods and such. I would note that the Blueprint Burke Strategic Land Use Plan does seek to identify and expand opportunities for uses that will expand recreation and tourism related uses in the county, and that there is sufficient infrastructure to support this use. There is a sewer line in the back of that track, and they will utilize that with their campground. So with that, that's what they're requesting, and that's what the staff will be bringing forward for your consideration.
Thank you, Alan. Gentlemen, questions, comments? Alan, on that site plan, can anything, of course it's early, but if approved, we got any idea how many campsites would be relevant there?
I think it was 49, I think.
Oh, it was 49, okay.
I think it's about 49, yeah.
All right,
On the 20 acres.
on the 20 acres, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, gentlemen?
One quick question. The adjacent property you said was already zoned general business?
Yeah.
That includes the Moose Lodge and the existing campground?
Correct. Those properties here, that's the Moose Lodge and campground, they're directly adjacent to this property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen? Alan, thank you, sir. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. This moves us to consent agenda items, gentlemen. Under consent agenda, item number 1, resolution concerning proposed road closure. Didn't get a chance to talk with Jeffrey. Do you have any background information on this specifically, sir?
I'll be happy to share. I think all of us probably received some information from at least one business and maybe more involved on the Curly's Fish Camp Road. And thinking about this and being a little bit familiar with the area, I asked Alan Wood, our director at BDI, to kind of take a look at that area, look at the impact on other businesses, as a large part of BDI's work is retention, business retention. And so Alan did take a look at it, and I asked him to work with Kay to develop a resolution. I hope you've had a chance to look at that resolution. And it mentions a number of businesses, and the primary concern is that the state, in their planning for this new interchange, is planning to basically dead end the Curly's Fish Camp Road, causing the only access to be all the way around to 70 back up into there, which would be quite detrimental to a number of businesses on Curly's Fish Camp Road. So you'll see in that resolution that basically we're asking the DOT to take another look at this project, see if there's some way they can maintain access to that end of Curly's Fish Camp Road. And further, toward the bottom of there, we'll see we've directed the clerk to send this resolution to our state delegation and to encourage the DOT. Madam Clerk, I assume that would also go to the DOT folks who are working and ask for comments on this project. So that's about the best I have for you. If you've got any questions, I'll try to answer them, or we can try to get some more answers.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. I will tell you, that's a great explanation. Gentlemen, questions, comments? We all got the information prior. I think it was pretty straightforward, so if you need any clarity on anything, now's the time. All right. Thank you, sir. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. This will move us on to appointment of Sheriff Heinzman to certain county boards presented by Madam Clerk, Kay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to replace former Sheriff Steve Wisnett on the JCPC and the Child Protection, Child Fatality Prevention Team for those respective boards that represent law enforcement. And those would be to complete unexpired terms for both those boards.
Gentlemen, any questions, comments? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. We'll move on to item number 3, reappointments to the LEPC. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This is a request to reappoint Israel Gibson, Mike Willis, Brooke Jarlson, April Pope, Joshua Mashburn, and Steve Jenkins to the local Emergency Planning Committee for three-year terms ending January 31st, 2026.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll move us to item number 4. Under consent items, reappointment to the Library Board of Trustees. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to reappoint Jenny Cook to the Library Board of Trustees, seat number 8, to complete an unexpired term ending December 31st, 2025.
Questions, comments? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
This will move us on to item number 5 under consent, finance, acceptance of SCIF funds presented by Margaret Pierce, our finance director. Margaret, how are you today?
The county received an allocation of $1 million in the state budget that was approved in the fall. The state agreement for these funds is anticipated to be received. We still have not received it yet, but they are working on it, but the holidays, several were off last week. Board approval is required to execute these contracts and proceed with expenditures under these funds. Per board directions, the list included here is subrecipient agencies that would receive the funds for programs ranging from responsible pet ownership and education and care, transitional housing, counseling, mental health, other services that are needed by the county citizens. Budgetary effect is we would increase revenue and expenses at a wash of $1 million each. I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Margaret, on this, is there any hold up at this point?
We need the state agreement on the subrecipient agencies. There is still one that we're working on. The wording, I sent some stuff to the state.
So that one's fixable.
That same one is still in limbo.
In limbo,
I think
okay.
Senator Daniels and Representative Blackwell are working on their side to take care of some things to make it flow.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Does anybody want to speak to this specifically? About the funds? This is a great opportunity for Burke County nonprofits that are going to be getting monies that oftentimes in the budget we cannot allocate. And so working with Senator Daniel and Mr. Hugh Blackwell, that with Johnny, Jeff, and I, we've been working on this since June, I believe. And so it's good to see this come to fruition. I know the agencies are excited. And like I said, this is a really nice thing that is going to be done with from the state legislature working with county together, getting this out there. So, and I appreciate your hard work on it, trying to juggle all this, because I know it hasn't been very easy to get it all organized. So
Thank you.
much appreciated. Any other questions, comments, gentlemen? All right.
Thank you.
Then without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. That'll bring us to item number 6, health resolution to direct the expenditure of opioid settlement funds, presented by Danny Scalise, our health director, and/or we got both, Corey Fisher-Wellman, DSS director. The dynamic duo.
More like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, I think. So Commissioners, you all know that the most pervasive problem, you just heard Chase say it, we've talked about substance use. If you talk to the sheriff, if you talk to the jail, the problems they're having are tied back to substance use. We know that that's one of the biggest problems, if not the biggest problem in the county. We have been fortunate that we got a nice chunk of change to use from the opioid settlement. We've been working on this for a little while. One of the things that we want to do, we want you to open some of the money up so we can hire someone who will work full-time on this. Not somebody who works part of the time for us or part of the time for this, that will work full-time on getting this money spent. There are certain things that it can be used for. Those things are strategies that we know help solve this problem, and we want to solve the problem here in Burke County. So that's what the amount is. It's not much. It's not even our first full amount, but we want to get that person in place, someone who can be a project manager, who can look after it and make sure that we're following all the conditions of the settlement that are required of us in order to spend that money, as well as to be able to tackle this problem in Burke County.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, as I've moved around the United States and made presentations on behalf of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners and with the National Association of Counties, here's the one thing that jumps out at me more than anything else. Nobody knows what they want to do with their monies. I talked to a number of counties, one in particular when I was in Denver. I asked the nice lady there, what are you going to do with your opioid settlement funds? And she said, buy Narcan. I said, what will buying the Narcan do? She said, it will save lives. I said, how many? She said, I don't know. I said, what are you going to do when you run out of money? And she looked at me and I said, the answer is people are going to continue to die because you don't have any more money. And as I've said, as I've moved around the number of states that I've made presentations for these organizations, I found that Burke County may be the only county in the United States of America that actually has a plan on what they want to do with their money. We need to take advantage of this. As Che made her report, it's the questions were asked, how are we going to do that? But the question is why? Why do we have the problem? Why is it so big? And we've been doing this for 2 years, almost 3 years. When we first started out, and I made some presentations standing right up there with Jeff and you, Scott. We made presentations about opioid abuse in Burke County, where we were identified by the CDC in Atlanta as the cesspool of pill production in western North Carolina, us in Caldwell and Catawba counties. Why, in God's name, does a small community like us push as many pills as we do down people's throats? There's a law enforcement component to this, that the sheriff is doing everything that he can do to try to stop the flow of drugs. Just turn on the news this morning and look at how many drugs were confiscated at the borders in Texas and in Florida. And the Cubans trying to come across in their little dingy boats trying to get to the United States of America. But what are they bringing with them? They're bringing all of these problems too. We can't survive. This community can't survive. DSS is just inundated with children that the only reason they're there is because their parents are freaking drug addicts. That's the bottom line. So when we sit here and we look at this, there's one thing that we can do, and I sat here and said it time and time again, there's one thing that we can do, and I want to make sure we do that one thing. I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. when your wife tells you if we could have done one more thing, our son wouldn't be dead. So till I take my last breath, I'm going to try to do that one more thing, that your child won't die, and your child won't die, and your child won't die. That's the whole purpose of this, is to make sure nobody else dies. We've lost too many good kids here in Burke County because of this. We have an opportunity to do something. It might not be the best thing in the world to do, but it is the thing that we need to do. It's the one and only thing that's out there for us to do. The money's been granted to us. Throw the politics out. We got 85% of that money, or 90% of the money coming to the counties now, where it was only 15% when we first started with the 555 committees. I'm very proud to be on that committee. I'm very proud that I danced on that desk and said, listen, 15% is not enough. We want the 90%. We want the 85% of the money, so we got it. So we have to put a plan together. We have to get somebody to help us here. We got a building over there that's ours, bought, paid for. We can use the building for this program. We just need to put our heads together. We need a project manager to do it for us. These two can't do it. I can't. The new county manager comes in, he's going to tell them to go back and do their jobs because we've been using them part-time to try to do what we need to try to do. So I'm going to preach it. I'm going to keep on preaching it. I'm going to raise my voice until somebody listens that we need to do what we need to do here in Burke County. The report says what it says. Those three things: mental illness, obesity. Who would ever have thought obesity would be a problem, but it's turned in our children. Take a look at our children in school. Bill, you've been there, you've seen it. Look at the kids in school. You know, we're not trying to blame anybody. Don't blame anybody. Just look at it. It's right there in front of you. My God, if you can't see it, you're blind as bad. You know, it's right there. So let's do something about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director Scalise, what's the time frame for the $300,000? When does that run out?
So that money won't run it. You all have a total of, right now, $13 million in change that will go over 18 years to be spent. I believe there will be more money that will be added to that at some time with future settlements that we will get a piece of, each county will get a piece of. Burke County was affected pretty poorly, so we got more than certain other counties. So for instance, I believe we have more than Caldwell and Catawba. Catawba's pretty close to us. We're about the same with them. So that money's going to last over 18 years. The $300,000 we're asking for is 2 years worth of that person. I worked with HR to get an amount of what it would cost us in terms of salary plus the benefits and all the other things that have to go to. It wasn't exactly $300,000. It was just a good round number that we could put in there that you all could okay for this position for a couple of years.
Any other questions, comments?
I just would comment. One, I applaud the effort to try to get someone to manage and take care of this process. I know that it's something that someone's going to have to really keep a close eye on, and there's going to be a lot of multi-agency cooperation that's going to have to be fostered. The only question I had is, who would this person report to?
Report to me.
Okay.
Directly. Commissioner, I'll tell you this, I haven't got a chance to talk to you about this issue, but I expect us to be a national leader. We're going to shoot for that. Mediocrity is not available here. We don't have that opportunity, and the citizens of Burke County deserve better than mediocrity. So to Commissioner Carswell's point, I've heard the same things from people. They don't know what they're doing. So we want to create a plan that we put in place using evidence-based strategy, using science that says we want to take care of the people who are actively using drugs right now, take care of the people who are in recovery, and then how do we prevent this from happening in the future? I've talked to Sheriff Heinzman. I've talked to our new jail administrator. When you talk to them, if we didn't have the pervasive drug problem we have, they wouldn't have as much business. So we want to help solve that problem a little bit because there's a lot of drugs that are causing the problems that are there.
Mr. Chairman, when I was called to come to Raleigh 2 weeks ago to speak to the Attorney General again, there are more lawsuits that have just been settled.
Yes, sir.
$13 million is not the bottom line for Burke County. There will be millions more dollars coming in to Burke County. We just do not know how much yet until those lawsuits are settled. The scum of the earth, the Purdue family, has still been in bankruptcy, trying to save all their billions and billions of dollars for their family after murdering all of these people that kids that they have so far. So when that lawsuit settles out, it's hard telling how many millions of dollars will be coming in that lawsuit when it is done. JR has received correspondence from the national attorneys, plus we've received correspondence, like I say, from Attorney General Stein, that these lawsuits are being settled actually as we speak. So we just don't know what the dollar amount will be added to that. We got a good program in place. We just need somebody to facilitate it for us. Other counties are scared to death because they don't know what they want to do with the money. They don't have a plan. We're the only ones got the plan out there, and I applaud these two young guys right here. They took this bull and they wrote it, and we actually have a plan in place. And that's the reason I get invitations to go. I got a call last week to go to Minnesota and make a presentation about what we're doing right here in Burke County, because they don't understand how we can work together. There was a little quote in Che's presentation about working together. It was Henry Ford quote. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but that's what we're trying to do here, is work together, not against each other.
If you go to Minnesota, I'd wait a couple of months. Might be a little cold.
One more quick question.
Yes, sir.
And I can imagine, this is going to be a model program. This is going to be something unique to the country, really, from everything I understand about it. I can't imagine that there wouldn't be additional grant opportunities as this moves forward. Would this new person be somewhat responsible for identifying and helping facilitate the application for grants?
Yes, sir. In your all's last meeting, you all approved an additional grant that we've already received. I expect that there will be more. I know that there is federal funding as well as foundational funding that's out there available that Burke County, the Burke County Health Department, and the Board of Commissioners would be eligible for. We plan to take any dollar that we can get to work on this. I don't think there's enough money to say, oh, we're good. We want to keep going. I think we'll have the money available to us, but we have to have somebody in place whose job, this is their life, because it is that big an issue.
Mr. Chairman, my recommendation would be that we move forward.
And I'm in agreement. Is there any other questions or comments, gentlemen? If not, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Guys. Thanks for all y'all do. Thank you, Commissioner Carswell. This will move us to item number 7, JCPC resolution supporting compression salaries and increases of Division of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Facility staff. Whew, that is a lot to say. AJ, how are you today?
I'm okay. This is obviously the day for you folks to deal with really big issues that may or may not have easy answers to them. I suspect that you read Dr. Moody's letter that accompanied our resolution. We're following in the footsteps of a number of other counties and juvenile crime prevention councils who are putting resolutions together to send to the legislature and hopefully get some relief for the detention centers that are under siege by the laws that have been passed down in the past few years that the council was totally in accordance with and seemed to be really helping in a number of ways. But of course, every new change, like raising the age, has brought its own problems. I don't think it's for anyone who's over, 50 maybe, that has lived through a number of political changes in the laws. It's not surprising that the law was changed. And insufficient funds or no funds were put behind addressing the change once the rubber hit the road locally. So we have detention centers who are woefully understaffed, who are paying their staffs so little that they can't get any HR in the state, can't get anybody to apply for positions to be there and help with the youth that are detained. And they are having trouble retaining the folks who are there because they can leave and make that much at McDonald's. So we're trying our little part to help motivate the funding for these two efforts. I think a lot of you folks have worked in county government enough that you're really familiar with how dire these things can get. And we have kids sleeping in the hallways. We have staff of one person, which is against the law, actually, to oversee the children. And it has to be addressed. From the policy folks that report on these things, it's my impression that the money was there when the budget started going through. And then because of my impression of what the report was, is that the wording changed the amounts and the folks who would get it. We understand that the adult correction system is, of course, in the same sort of fix, and they take precedence, as always, over juvenile issues. That's, kids are the last to come and the first to go in terms of funding. And so that's the situation we're in. Dr. Moody's letter, I think, spelled it out rather succinctly and alarmingly. And so we're asking if you would help us address this issue of refinancing these positions and retention efforts. And I'll answer any questions I can answer.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? AJ, thank you. There being none.
Thanks, and thank you so much, and your clerk, for getting this onto your docket so quickly. I was pleased and delighted. Thanks
You
again.
can thank Madam Clerk.
Yes.
She wants it done, it gets done.
That is who I'm thinking. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much. All right, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. This will bring us to the final three. We get Mr. John Bridgers up here to close us out. Final three items. First item, item number 8, Tax Department approval collection agreement with Town of Valdez.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I was approached by the Town of Valdez with the possibility of the county collecting the Valdez city taxes for them in addition to our county taxes that we charge for the citizens in the Town of Valdez. And so the agreement is what tell us what we would be doing, what they would be doing. The town has not approved this yet. Their meeting will be on next Monday, and so before your next meeting, they will have either approved or disapproved this.
Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Where is their tax collector?
The tax collector they currently have will still be there, but I don't know why they want to, other than our economies of scale makes it easier for us to collect it for them.
Well, I know we've collected for some of the smaller towns, but I was taken aback when I saw Valdez come ask us to do that. Did they give you any other reason besides the economy of scale?
No, they did not.
And how much will we actually be making? 1.5%?
I think it's in the statement. Do you know, Margaret, how much?
It's a
1.5% I see here.
So we have staff to do that,
Yes, it's not going to be much more work than what we're already doing.
but it will be more work than what you're doing.
Yes. It will be more, particularly for any delinquent taxes. If for just a regular bill, it's going to be no more because the bill goes out and they just make the check payment to us. If they're delinquent on the city taxes, they're probably going to be delinquent on the county taxes anyway. So it's really not any additional work.
Okay, I'm satisfied with those answers.
Okay, Jeff?
So John, the 1.5%, I didn't try to figure out what kind of dollar that is, but I guess I'm kind of along the same vein here as Johnny's going. Are we satisfied that our additional effort at 1.5%, we're going to be covered?
I think we will. It's the same we've got agreement with other towns, so it seems to be working well.
Yeah, so everybody else is paying 1.5%, is that correct? Okay.
And I know we've had changes on your staff, some new folks, so you still, like I said, I'm gonna beat a dead horse now, because I know we just talked about I think you
Yeah.
had somebody really that just joined the team.
Yeah, that person was in the listing department.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are good. That was my only concern too. So if you're comfortable, I'm comfortable. Gentlemen, any other questions, comments? All right, without objection, this item remain on the consent agenda. Item number 9, tax collection report for December 2022.
The tax collections report is not complete because I don't have the figures from the NCVTS. There was no data available from the state. So it's not totally complete, but for the property tax, year-to-date, we've collected $38,533,968.68. That's 81.14% collected of the budget amount, leaving us amount to collect $7,266,031.32. For the current year taxes, we have collected $37,503,691.15. That's 72.40% of the budgeted amount, leaving us to collect $14,296,308.85. For delinquent taxes, we have collected $423,576.97. That's 60% of the budget, 60.51% of the budgeted amount, leaving us a balance to collect of $276,423.03. Late list penalty, we have collected $126,882.19. That's 40.28% collected, with leaving us a balance to collect of $188,117.81. And the tax levy, that's not complete because it don't have the automobile figures to add in there.
John, thank you. Gentlemen, questions, comments? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Moving on to item number 10, release refund report for December 2022.
The total report was $8,294.06, with a rebuild amount of that of $4,041.93, leaving a net release of $4,252.13 with no refund at all.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? Yes, sir.
John, I know that over the years we've looked at these reports. What have you done that is different for this to get down to one page now when it used to be 6 pages long?
Just my good work.
Just good work, okay.
I really think that it is a culmination of overextended years. Now, there will be more, depending on the time of year it is.
Yeah, I used to question how we could do duplicate billing and things like that, so we probably have got that under control now.
Well, we're working on it. I mean, it's
Okay.
not totally gone away, but we're working on it.
And the adjustments was kind of sort of always, they asked, the person asked for the adjustment, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, John, if you don't mind, just for the benefit of our new members, just an easy summary. Just explain what the rebuild and all that's about.
Well, for instance, if somebody has a double wide or a single wide or a residence we're billing it with a landfill user fee, that it's not habitable, so we take that off. We take away the landfill user fee and then we rebill it. So it's a reduction of $82 for that landfill user fee, but then it's a rebill, so that's what that is. Or it may be that we've got them assessed for 4 acres of land and there's only 3 3/4 acres or something like that. And so it's still, they still owe taxes, but we're reducing what it is. So you have to release the bill and then rebill it the way the computer system is. You have to release the bill and then bill it back as it should be.
Is that the best way to do it?
That's the way we have to do it according to the current system we have. I don't
And
know
the
that's
question
the best way.
being, was that the best way to do it?
I don't know if it's the best way, but that's the way we have to do it.
Okay, sir, thank you. I really think you answered my question.
Gentlemen, any other questions, comments? John, I do want to mention, I did see via email that you successfully completed your requirements for a little small, as a county assessor here in North Carolina. You want to address that right quick and just give us an update on that train? Congratulations, by the way.
Well, thank you, sir. The Department of Revenue requires that every assessor appointed across the state take a minimum number of courses, and I have completed that. You have to do it within 2 years, and so, of course, I've done it in 9 months. So thank you, Margaret, for letting me take these classes and as I needed to and could take them. So, but I made the minimum score, over the minimum score to pass, so I'm pleased with that.
So not bare minimum, though?
Not the bare minimum, no.
Okay.
It wasn't 100%, but it was not the bare minimum.
It's closer to 100%, though, I think.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, congratulations on that. I just want to recognize you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. We have no items for decision, so this moves us to reports. I would remind everyone to provide reports ASAP for inclusion in the agenda packet, so please submit those to Madam Clerk. If you don't, and she finds out you didn't submit them, well, then you have to answer to her. So at this time, there's no other discussion items, so I would remind everyone, as we always do at every meeting, please spay or neuter your pets. Just had a complaint today, by the way, and I know it's Christmas, and I know many of us have been convenience sites or landfills, and we're always complaining about overflow of trash on our roads. I know we got a complaint today about going to the landfill and there being an abundance of trash along that route.
While we have Mark here, can we ask if the roads had been cleaned up over to the landfill?
I don't know that they have.
Okay.
Holidays, it's a mess out there. I'm sure you already contacted the state, whose responsibility it is. They told me to get right on, and I'll contact them again and ask what it is.
Thank you for that. That is, like I said, we hear complaints, and I know because of the heavy load this time of year, where there's a huge burden and strain on us, and so I would just say, I remind everybody to cover your loads when you're going to landfill or convenience sites, please.
Also, Mr. Chairman, if you would, Mark, if you will tell the guys at the convenience sites, we appreciate them working on Wednesdays. That particular Wednesday, they were supposed to be off. They went in and they cleaned up the convenience sites. Now, Highway 18 from my house down to the convenience site is a total absolute mess. But the site itself, the guys did an excellent job, and we do appreciate them for doing that. Hopefully, we can get them some bathrooms to go along with that soon.
Yes, we've been harping on that for years. We got to get that done. And once again, congratulate the rest of your team that responded to some infrastructure emergency situations because due to well, not unforeseen cold, but unprecedented cold for December. They were called out after hours, the middle of the night during cold weather, and they did a remarkable job. All our employees that really stepped up in time, because we may be off, there's still people behind the scenes that are not. And they're putting in the overtime so everybody else can enjoy themselves over the holidays or whenever it is, weekends. So just want to mention that as well. Also, I will remind everyone the MLK banquet Saturday, January 14th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Morgan and Community House. County offices will be closed Monday, January 16th in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Our regular scheduled meeting is January 17th at 6 p.m. And I do want to, I was made aware that there was a passing of Jack and Maxine Carroll's son. And so he's a former commissioner, for those of you that don't know. And so he's a part of the commissioner family, and we want to extend our condolences to them and their family. And so let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers at this time. At this time, gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. 5-0.